President Trump announced the 2027 United States defense budget will rise over 50% to about 2,180 trillion won. It was once called the 1,000 trillion country, but now it's the 2,000 trillion country, highlighting the United States' focus on boosting military power. Let's examine this today. On January 7th, President Trump of the United States stated that for the benefit of the United States, the 2027 defense budget should not be $1 trillion, but $1.5 trillion, and he made this decision and announcement. He said this is to build the dream military we can rely on for years, and more importantly, to ensure our safety against any enemies. If the defense budget increases this much, it will reach 5% of gross domestic product. President Trump, when asked how to secure such a massive amount of funding, mentioned the huge profits coming from countries that have been taking advantage of the United States, and said that it could be covered through tariffs and other means. President Trump has boldly showcased military power since 2026 began. At the start of the year, he attacked Venezuela and extradited Maduro, showcasing America's military strength. He then said Colombia also requires attention, claimed Greenland is vital for the United States, and showed readiness to back protests and airstrikes in Iran, consistently displaying military strength. President Trump is raising the defense budget mainly due to the budget shortage. President Trump announced the Golden Dawn Space Missile Defense Plan and the Golden Fleet Initiative to boost the Navy's combat power, including battleships. Both cost a huge amount. When Golden Dawn was announced, the total was about $175 billion or 230 trillion won. The Golden Dome is a major project to deploy satellites and interception systems in space to detect and intercept ballistic or hypersonic missiles launched worldwide using lasers and other methods. The main problem is that many experts say that with about 230 trillion won, it would not be possible to build the defense system proposed by President Trump. A United States Congressional Budget Office report says building space-based interceptors could cost up to $542 billion, or about 791 trillion won. Each Trump-class battleship in the Golden Fleet is expected to cost around 14 trillion won. President Trump said he would pour massive defense spending to solve the budget shortage problem. On a larger scale, America's strategy isn't just about showing military power, but aims to structurally pressure China. The United States is pushing China into tough long-term choices without direct confrontation, mainly avoiding an arms race, a strategy proven during the Cold War. The United States, through the space race and strategic arms competition with the Soviet Union, forced the Soviet Union to pour more resources into maintaining its system and military spending. As a result, the Soviet economy collapsed from within. The key is that the Soviet Union fell not from war defeat, but from failing to compete. Looking at China's current situation, there are more and more similarities with the Soviet Union at that time. Many believe that the Chinese economy has already passed its peak of growth and is now entering a downward phase. Double-digit growth has ended, and the growth rate drops yearly. At one time, there were many predictions that by 2030, China's gross domestic product would surpass that of the United States. But the reality is quite the opposite. The gap is not narrowing. In fact, it is widening. On top of this, the real estate market slump, local government debt issues, and shrinking domestic demand are all combining to noticeably weaken the strength of the Chinese economy. The more fundamental problem is the population structure. China is already riding the huge wave of low birth rates and an aging population. The working age population is decreasing, and the younger generation that supports productivity is rapidly declining. This is not a problem that can be solved in a short period of time. As the growth engine is gradually fading, the moment is approaching when the country will have to choose where to allocate its massive finances. But at this very moment, the United States has set the stage for an arms race. The United States is accelerating its development of advanced weapons and investment in military technology. The problem is that China cannot ignore this competition either. If they fall behind militarily, they'll lose leadership in regional security, including the Taiwan issue. In the end, whether China wants it or not, it is being dragged into a situation where it has no choice but to spend a huge amount on military expenses. This choice becomes a fatal burden on the Chinese economy. Military spending does not increase productivity or boost domestic demand, and the visible results are also limited. When military spending rises during economic hardship, funds shift from welfare, industry, and social stability. Like the former Soviet Union, outward strength can hide growing internal weaknesses. The United States understands this well. By fostering long-term competition without direct conflict, China depletes its own strength over time, while the United States stays flexible and China's choice is narrow. Ultimately, this strategy is about long-term endurance, not quick wins. The current trend shows the game's rules favor the United States, which also has prior experience winning similar competitions. Of course, it's uncertain whether President Trump can actually secure this amount of over $2 trillion as a defense budget, since the budget is strictly under the authority of Congress. It's also unclear whether it can pass through the United States Congress. This year's midterm elections make it unlikely the opposition Democratic Party will agree, so most people doubt the defense budget will really increase this much. As I mentioned earlier, President Trump insists the United States must boost its defense budget to counter China, so the Democratic Party may feel pressured by his justification. This arms race isn't limited to the United States and China. If the United States raises defense spending to 5% of gross domestic product, it will affect all its allies. The United States has repeatedly urged NATO countries to spend 2% of their gross domestic product on defense, publicly pressuring those that fall short. If the United States sets a new 5% standard, its allies can't stick to the old one. The United States will then have grounds to demand more defense spending and military contributions from allies, citing competition with China. This pressure is likely to start with Europe. European countries, having already experienced war with Russia, are directly feeling security concerns, and public resistance to increasing defense spending is lower than it was in the past. If the United States raises standards, major European countries like Germany and France will have less choice and may need to boost military spending, possibly reducing welfare or social budgets. The same applies to Asia. Japan is moving away from the post-war system by boosting its defense budget, while Australia plans to add nuclear-powered submarines in cooperation with the United States. South Korea is also following this trend. With the security situation on the Korean Peninsula overlapping with the United States-China conflict, there is a high possibility that the pressure to increase defense spending will continue. The higher the standards set by the United States, the greater the burden on its allies becomes automatically. If this happens, a global arms race will follow. As one country raises its defense budget, neighbors feel threatened and must respond. Once military spending rises, it's hard to cut back due to growing costs for maintenance, personnel, and research. As a result, there is a trend of military spending becoming structurally entrenched around the world. As the defense budget increases, global tensions may also rise, possibly leading to more conflicts. This poses a serious question for Korea, which is at the center of the arms race, not on the sidelines. In a situation where the United States-China conflict has become structural, Korea is also dealing with the North Korean nuclear issue, and on top of that, there is the practical pressure of the South Korea-United States alliance. We are being pushed into a situation where it is difficult to choose between increasing the defense budget further or securing as much diplomatic space as possible. If the United States demands more military support from allies, South Korea can't avoid it. The issue is that raising our defense budget limits our other options. The limited budget makes it harder to find solutions that meet security, economic, and diplomatic needs at once. However, in this crisis, South Korea is not in a completely disadvantageous position. In fact, if we approach it strategically, there is a possibility that it could turn into an opportunity. The United States Navy is experiencing a major shipbuilding crisis. They can't build warships on schedule, and their maintenance abilities have dropped sharply. Meanwhile, South Korea has top-tier shipbuilding technology and production capabilities. As the United States seeks to expand its naval power, Korea's shipbuilding industry plays a key role in rebuilding the United States Navy's shipbuilding capabilities. This is military and industrial cooperation, and it's a way to link the alliance to economic benefits. The same applies to the defense industry, right? With the global arms race heating up, weapon demand is set to surge. The Korean defense industry is already growing internationally due to its cost-effectiveness, quick delivery, and proven real-world performance. Outside Europe and the Middle East, military realignment led by the United States could offer new opportunities. While being an ally can be burdensome, it also allows for technological cooperation, joint production, and increased exports. In the end, the choices facing Korea are not clear-cut. It is a situation where we have to consider all at once the issues of increasing defense spending, maintaining diplomatic autonomy, and securing industrial benefits by utilizing alliances. Although the range of choices is gradually narrowing, depending on which direction we move within that, the crisis may remain only as a burden, or it could become a stepping stone for strategic advancement. In this era of arms competition, Korea now stands before the question of which direction to choose. And depending on how we answer this question, the next 10 or 20 years could be very different. What are your thoughts on the rise in United States military power? Share in the comments. Thanks for watching.